I begin by dragging this photo of the bricks window wall. I have deleted the inside part of the photo already by using the pen tool. I place it and I will scale it non-proportionally. I place the picture of Lara. I place the leaves. I also have erased the background by using the Select Subject feature, then I made some refinements to the selection. And I place this layer above the other layers. I press Ctrl or Command T to free transform, and then right-click, flip horizontal. I will open this photo now. I take the rectangular marquee tool, and I make a selection only to the city inside. It doesn't have to be perfect. I press Ctrl or Command J to duplicate that selection, then I drag it to my composition. I convert it into a smart object. I scale it. I place the city layer below Lara. Now I will be grouping and renaming the layers, so I can have it more organized and to be able to put the effects more easily. You can notice that part of the bow is behind the bricks wall. I open the bricks wall, then I create a layer mask. I will load a selection in Lara's layer. Put the mouse in the layer thumbnail, then press and hold the Ctrl or Command key and click to load a selection when you see the square icon. I select the layer mask of the bricks wall. I take the brush tool with black color, and I paint in that part of the bow to reveal it. Ctrl or Command D to deselect. Now you have the bow completely in the front. I select the sky layer group. I create a levels adjustment with a clipping mask. I move the sliders. I move this opacity slider to darken up the image a little bit. I go to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur. I enter 12 pixels. I select Lara's layer. I double-click it to bring up the Layer Style dialog box. I click on the gradient overlay, and I select the transparent gradient with black color. This is to darken the image a little in the legs parts. I click in Color Overlay and I select black. I select the brick wall and I do the same as the city layer. I create a brightness and contrast also. And then an exposure adjustment layer. Remember to click on the clipping mask icon to affect only that layer. I set the opacity of that layer to 50%. I create a new empty layer with a clipping mask. I go to Edit, Fill. Then I select 50% gray. I set the blending mode of this layer to overlay. Now, I will be using the dodge and burn tools in this layer to brighten and darken up some parts of the wall. I'll leave it in mid-tones, and the exposure I set it to 30%. I select the leaves branches layer, and now I want to create a shadow with the layer styles. You can follow my settings or do your own. Now, place the cursor in this part of the layer and make right-click and select Create Layer. Here just click OK. Now I have the shadow in a separate layer. I can create a layer mask or use the eraser tool to delete some parts of the shadow. I reduce the opacity. I create a levels adjustment. I create another levels adjustment to brighten up the leaves a little bit. I press Ctrl or Command I to invert the effect in the layer mask. I select Lara's layer, then I duplicate it. I will remove the layer styles by making right-click, then clear layer styles. I will put the inner shadow layer style to make some highlights. Then I do the same as the leaves shadows. I will separate the inner shadow style. You will have something like this. I delete that layer because I don't need it anymore. Now, press and hold the Alt or Option key between the layers, and when you see this icon, click to make a clipping mask. And then you have the effect back. I do it like this because I can have much better control over the highlights. Now with the brush tool, I reduce the yellow color of the bow. And also I reduce the opacity of the brush. I create a levels adjustment to Lara, also with a clipping mask. And also a shadows and highlights. I make a new layer to create lights with the brush tool. I select a yellow color and I click. I reposition this light, I scale it, and also I duplicate it. I reduce the opacity of the lights. I create another layer. I switch my background color with black by pressing the X key, then I press and hold Ctrl or Command and the backspace key to fill it with black. Now I go to Filter, Render, then Clouds. I set the blending mode of this layer to Screen. I lower the opacity and I create a layer mask. I take the brush tool to reduce more the effect. What I want to create is in slight smoke. I create a new layer, I fill it with black, and I convert it into a smart object. Go to Filter, Render, Lens Flare. You can move the lens flare and change the settings. I place it above in the right corner. Then I set THR blending mode to Screen. And now to complete this tutorial, I will create color effects. I create a solid layer. And I put this blue color. I set the blending mode to multiply, and I reduce the opacity to 10%. It's a very subtle change, but make the difference in the final design. I create a color lookup. In the 3D lot file, I choose Film Stock 50. And I reduce the opacity to 50%. I group the color effects. You can see the before and after. Now, I will drag the Tomb Raider name. I place it below. I put an outer glow, so that it can be noticed. So there you have it. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe and share. Thank you so much for watching, and I see you in the next video.